Before the United States was a nation, before there was a constitution, a capital, or even a clear idea of what America would become, power was already pooling in one place. 13 colonies existed on paper, but influence was never evenly distributed. Some colonies followed, one colony led, and the uncomfortable question historians still debate is this: did one state quietly control America's early future before the country even realized it? In the chaos of the 1700s, authority didn't come from flags or borders. It came from people, who they were, where they were born, and who listened when they spoke. While other colonies struggled with identity, instability, or internal division, one state produced a concentration of leaders so influential that their ideas became America's default settings. Their values shaped how power was viewed. Their instincts defined leadership. Their compromises decided who won arguments before debates even began. This state didn't just send delegates to Congress, it dominated the room. When revolution loomed, its sons were already experienced in governance. They had served in colonial assemblies, commanded militias, negotiated with Britain, and managed vast economic systems. While others were still learning how to resist empire, this state was deciding what should replace it. That difference mattered. In moments of uncertainty, people listened to those who sound certain, and certainty became this state's greatest weapon. Look closely at the early foundations of America, and a pattern emerges. The architects of independence, the military commanders trusted with survival, the thinkers who framed liberty and language, others could rally behind. Again and again, their roots trace back to the same soil. It wasn't coincidence. It was infrastructure, social, political, and cultural, built long before 1776 ever arrived. This state understood hierarchy in a way others didn't. It believed leadership was a responsibility passed down, not improvised in crisis. Its elite were trained to govern from birth, educated in classical models of republics, empires, and law. When America needed structure, it borrowed theirs. When it needed legitimacy, it leaned on their reputations. When unity was fragile, their voices carried weight. Others simply didn't possess. That influence created resentment even then. Other states noticed it. Some resisted it. But when decisions had to be made fast about war, alliances, or survival, this state's leaders were already positioned as the adults in the room. They didn't always get what they wanted, but they almost always set the terms of debate. This raises an uncomfortable truth for a nation built on equality. America may have been born united, but it was guided unequally. One state didn't officially rule the early republic, but it often decided where the republic would go. And that's the tension at the heart of America's founding story. Was this leadership necessary? Did it save the nation in its most fragile years? Or did it quietly tilt the balance of power before Americans ever had a chance to argue about it? To understand whether one state controlled America's early future, we have to look beyond myths and slogans. We have to examine who held authority when authority mattered most, when the nation was still an idea and failure was just one bad decision away. Because before America chose its path, someone helped choose it for them. Power rarely announces itself. In early America, it didn't arrive through conquest or decree. It emerged through repetition. The same voices kept being heard. The same men kept being trusted. The same state kept supplying leadership when crises demanded it. Over time, what began as circumstance hardened into habit. As revolution turned into war, the Continental Congress faced a terrifying reality. Ideals alone wouldn't win independence. Armies had to be raised, supplied, disciplined, and led. Failure meant execution for treason. Victory meant the birth of an untested nation. In that moment, Congress didn't gamble on the loudest voices or the most radical ideas. They chose stability, and stability to them looked like experience. Once again, that experience came disproportionately from one state. Its leaders understood land, logistics, and command. They were used to managing vast territories and complex social systems. They had led militias before the war ever started and knew how to command respect without chaos. So when America needed generals, governors, diplomats, and negotiators, Congress kept turning back to the same source, not because of favoritism, but because trust had already been built. That trust created momentum. Every appointment reinforced the next. Every successful command justified another promotion. Slowly, early America began to equate leadership with a particular style: calm, reserved, authoritative, disciplined. This wasn't accidental. It reflected the political culture of the state, producing these leaders. Other states contributed courage, sacrifice, and revolutionary fire, but this one provided something equally valuable: continuity. Even as the war dragged on, its influence didn't fade. In fact, it grew stronger. Its leaders didn't just fight battles. They managed alliances, balanced regional interests, and prevented the fragile coalition from tearing itself apart. When disagreements erupted between northern and southern colonies, large and small states, radicals and moderates, compromise often passed through the hands of men from this single state. That made them indispensable and dangerous, because influence without opposition tends to expand. As the war ended and victory arrived, America faced a new crisis: how to govern itself. Independence had been won, but unity was far from guaranteed. The Articles of Confederation proved weak. States argued, economies clashed, the young nation drifted toward instability. And once again, when Americans looked for solutions, they looked to the same place. This state's leaders were central in shaping the arguments that defined federal power, state authority, and executive leadership. They didn't just participate in debates, they framed them. They knew how to speak to farmers and elites, soldiers and merchants. Their ideas became the middle ground others had to respond to. By this point, influence had become structural. It was no longer about individual brilliance. It was about networks, shared education, shared assumptions, shared visions of what America should be. That meant even when leaders from other states rose, they were often responding to a framework already established. This is where the question sharpens. Was America guided wisely through its most fragile years by a state uniquely prepared to lead? Or did that preparation give it an outsized voice that shaped the nation before true balance was ever possible? Because by the time Americans began arguing about equality, representation, and fairness, the foundation had already been poured. And the blueprint, whether intentional or not, carried the fingerprints of one state more than any other. In the next section, we'll confront the moment when this influence reached its peak, and when Americans first began to openly question whether leadership had quietly turned into dominance. Influence is easiest to ignore when it feels necessary, but the moment it starts to feel permanent, people resist. By the late 1780s, that resistance began to surface, not against Britain but within America itself. The war was over. The danger of invasion had passed. For the first time, Americans had the luxury of arguing about power instead of survival. And when they did, one uncomfortable pattern became impossible to ignore. The same state kept shaping the direction of the nation. Its leaders dominated constitutional debates. Its political philosophy defined executive authority. Its vision of federal strength often outweighed concerns raised by smaller or less populated states. What once felt like leadership now felt like gravity, pulling everything toward a single center. During the Constitutional Convention, this tension quietly filled the room. Delegates from other states respected the experience and discipline this state brought, but they feared what came with it. If leadership continued to concentrate here, would the republic become a hierarchy disguised as a union? Would independence simply replace one distant authority with another, closer to home? These weren't abstract fears. They were grounded in real power dynamics. This state had population. It had land, it had wealth, it had political unity. And most dangerously, it had confidence. Its leaders spoke as if governance were second nature, as if the nation's future simply needed refinement, not reinvention. To some delegates, that calm certainty felt reassuring. To others, it felt dismissive. Debates over executive power exposed the fault line. How strong should a president be? How much authority was too much? The state that had already produced the most influential military and political leaders argued for decisiveness, unity, and centralized authority. They believed disorder was the true enemy of liberty. Other states, especially those with fresh memories of external control, worried that concentration of power was the very thing America had fought to escape. This was the first time Americans openly asked a dangerous question. Had one state grown too accustomed to leading? The compromise solutions that followed, checks and balances, divided branches, shared authority, were not accidents. They were safeguards. And while leaders from this dominant state helped design them, the intent was clear. No single region should ever again guide the nation without restraint. Yet even with these protections, influence lingered. The first administrations reflected it. Early federal norms reflected it. The tone of American leadership, measured, restrained, authoritative, mirrored the political culture that had shaped it from the beginning. Even opposition movements often defined themselves against this state's vision, proving just how central it had become. Ironically, this pushback strengthened the nation. By forcing America to confront the risks of concentrated influence early, the young republic learned how to argue without collapsing. Power was questioned, redistributed, and limited without violence. That alone set the United States apart from revolutions that descended into chaos or dictatorship. So the legacy becomes complicated. This state did not control America's early future by force. It didn't conquer, it didn't dictate, but it guided, so consistently and so early that its influence became foundational. And when Americans finally pushed back, they weren't rejecting leadership itself, they were redefining it. In the final section, we'll answer the question head-on. Did one state control America's early future? Or did it simply carry the burden until the nation was strong enough to carry itself? So, did one state control America's early future? The honest answer is more unsettling and more impressive than a simple yes or no. In the nation's earliest and most fragile years, America did not yet know how to be America. There was no tradition to rely on, no proven system, no historical safety net. What existed instead was urgency, survival, and the need for leadership that could act without tearing the experiment apart. One state stepped into that vacuum, not because it seized power, but because it was already built to wield it. Its leaders didn't arrive as conquerors. They arrived as stewards, men shaped by responsibility, long before independence, accustomed to governing land, people, and conflict. When chaos threatened, they offered structure. When passion threatened division, they offered restraint. That combination made them indispensable, even when others grew uneasy with their prominence. And unease was justified, because while this state did not dominate through force, it undeniably shaped the nation's tone, priorities, and assumptions. It helped define what leadership looked like, what authority sounded like, what reasonable power meant. Even the limits placed on government were, in part, reactions to how influential this state had become. Its presence shaped both action and opposition. That is influence at the deepest level. But here's the crucial distinction. Control implies permanence, and permanence never came. As the nation matured, other states rose. New regions demanded representation. Different political cultures asserted themselves. The dominance of any single state faded, not through collapse, but through dilution. Power spread as the population spread. The system adjusted. That was the goal all along. In that sense, America passed its first great test. The country accepted leadership when it needed guidance, then learned how to challenge it without destroying the Union. That transition from reliance to balance is one of the most overlooked achievements in American history. Many revolutions fail right there. America didn't. So perhaps the better question isn't whether one state controlled America's early future, but whether America would have survived without it. Would the Revolution have held together without experienced leadership? Would the Constitution have been forged without disciplined compromise? Would the presidency have emerged as a stabilizing force rather than a throne? There are no clean answers. But history leaves clues. When the stakes were highest, Americans repeatedly entrusted their future to leaders from the same place. That trust wasn't blind. It was earned. And when the time came to limit that influence, the system proved strong enough to do so. That balance between trust and restraint is the real legacy. It's why this debate still sparks argument today. Some see foundational guidance. Others see early imbalance. Both are right. And that tension is not a flaw in the American story. It's proof that the system worked. Because America was never meant to be shaped by one state forever. It was meant to survive its beginnings and then grow beyond them.